Hi guys, it is Sky, and of course I'm here with another video for you guys. So, today might be a little interesting for some of you guys because you probably wouldn't guess that I do this, but it's actually been a huge point of interest for me for years. So, I am going to really go over it and explain it, and I guess I should tell you what it is. Today, I am talking about guide dogs. As acromats, people with Achromotopsia, the subject of guide dogs is an interesting one because, as you guys I'm sure know now from all of my videos, everyone has really different vision when you have Achromotopsia. And so that means that some people will have, if they have partial achromatopsia or, something like that, they will be able to drive with, a really restricted license and only on certain routes and only on certain days and only with certain filtered glasses. But yes, some people can drive. And then there's the other spectrum where I'm more around, where your vision is quite low, 2400, and you can't drive and it's harder to get around and stuff like that. So when you come to the topic of guide dogs, there's a lot of factors involved with getting one or with understanding them, with pairing them with people with low vision that aren't completely blind, with how the dogs are raised, how they're trained. I'm going to go over all of that today, and hopefully you'll learn something. And the reason I'm making this video is I've actually applied for a guide dog, and I'm going to explain all of that to you guys, and hopefully you will understand everything. I'm really excited to get into it. So without further ado, let's start. So the reason I've applied for a guide dog, well, actually I've gotten a lot of questions and stuff, like people asking why don't I use certain tinted contacts, or why don't I use certain glasses and get around with, using these certain filters and lenses. And I've tried a lot of things, a lot of different glasses, different lenses, different filters, and I'm gonna tell you right now that they don't always help. For me, the darker things are, the easier my eyes can see, the easier they can work, but the harder it is for me to differentiate things. So for whatever reason, what that means is when I'm wearing really dark contacts or really dark glasses, the shades that I can see, because I see the world in grayscale, they blend together. So even though it's easier for my eyes to actually be open and look, it blends everything together, and so my depth perception is even more gone, and I tend to not notice things like dark on dark or light on light. So like steps, it's harder to see steps, it's harder to see dark things on dark things, it's harder to see anything inside of a shadow. So even though I am, yes, able to keep my eyes open with dark filters and contacts, I'm not able to actually see a lot of things that I would be otherwise. So, and a lot of people I know mix glasses together, mix glasses and contacts. Well, for me, I actually have a very severe astigmatism, which means that my eyes are very funny shaped, and I've tried contacts. I've had a lot of different fits, and even with the proper fit for me, my contacts were normally they're like this, mine were like this, and they did not stay in my eyes well. Even when I had the proper fit, I had them falling out of my eyes in the middle of the day, and it just wasn't working out at all. So contacts weren't really an option. I do use dark glasses, but again, they just don't work all the time, and they blend things together. For me, I might have a dark pair of glasses, and then I'll be outside in the sunlight and they're not dark enough, but then I'll walk into a spot of shade and they're too dark. So I've just had a lot of issues with finding glasses that work, or relying on my vision with glasses. I mean, I do use them, of course. An acromat would be crazy not to wear sunglasses, but I haven't found anything that works for me, and I've been looking for 20 years. So that being said, and with all the glasses I found, and yes, I'm still looking, but looking into a guide dog was a very good idea for me for a few reasons. First off, I do use a cane. I travel with a long white cane, and this is, of course, for the reasons I've mentioned before just now, that I do have issues with depth perception. I do have issues with finding the right kind of glasses that work for me because I haven't been able to. And I do sometimes miss curbs. Even with the darkest glasses, I've never been able to find a pair of glasses that has allowed me to see things like tree branches and obstacles right in front of my face. and I have never been able to find a pair of glasses that helps me not blink outside. I know a lot of acromats see by blinking, and that's really never not been able to happen. So what that means is I'm not able to see motion. So that means that, for instance, I can't see the movement of cars. I rely almost all on my hearing when I'm dealing with traffic and cars and stuff like that. And so there's just a few factors like crowds. I can't see crowds, people moving, spaces in between crowds because there's no depth perception. There's just so many reasons that I'd use my cane. But with those things I just mentioned, a cane isn't always going to be your best option. For instance, a cane finds obstacles, it feels the ground, but what a guide dog does is it actually travels around obstacles. It avoids them, it dodges them. So with people with low vision, especially Achromotopsia, we are able to see landmarks when we're right by them usually. We're not able to see them coming up to them or anything, but right when we're there we can see them. So a lot of people who are completely blind, they complain when they're using a guide dog because they were able to know where they are by feeling their surroundings. And then they'd know because of the tactile sensation of where they are. With us, we are able to see where we are right when we're there. So we wouldn't really miss the tactile information that our canes would give us by feeling the ground if we could just avoid things altogether. Apart from that, guide dogs can do a lot of things canes can't. So when I was talking about crowds, a guide dog is able to weave you in and out of people in a crowd without tripping anyone like a cane would, or without trying to find a space like a cane would. A dog just goes right through there, flows right through people. Another thing a dog can do is, of course, overhead obstacles, like I mentioned. If a dog sees a tree branch in front of your way, or a pillar sticking out that's in front of you, or construction tape, or anything like that, the dog will stop to warn you that there's something in front of your face. So that's really, really cool. Another cool thing that guide dogs can do is something called intelligent disobedience. Now, this is where if something dangerous is going to happen, and the dog knows it, and you don't because our vision isn't good enough to tell, the dog will refuse to go forward on your command. So I'm going to use cars as an example because they are the primary example for this. Say that you wanted to cross the street, and we'll just go with it's a quieter street, and there's a car, one of those smart cars that doesn't make any noise, and it's white, and you don't see the car, and you tell the dog to go forward because you want to go forward, you think it's safe, and the car is coming right at you. Well, if the dog sees that car, which of course it will because it has much better vision than anyone who's legally blind would have, the dog will refuse to go forward on your command. And you can tell it 4 or 5 times that dog will not go forward if it is not safe. So you can apply intelligent disobedience to a lot of different things. Like construction, if there's a hole in the ground because of construction, the dog won't go forward. If you're coming up to the edge of a subway platform, the dog won't go forward. If there's any kind of danger in front of you, if there's a line right at foot level that you can't see, a wire, anything, the dog will not go forward. So these are all really, really important safety issues that I, as an acrobat, deal with a lot, and a lot of people with low vision deal with. A lot of the times, because we have a little bit of vision, we think we can see more than we can, and it gets us into trouble. A guide dog has that safety factor there that you don't have to worry about getting into trouble, running into things, that kind of thing. Another really cool thing that a guide dog can do is actually something called targeting. Targeting is teaching a dog to find a person or a thing around you. So I'm going to use a trash can as an example. Say that you're at your, local park, and you have eaten an ice cream cone and you want to throw away the napkin. Well, where's a trash can? I know that, at least for me, and I'm guessing a lot of other acromats, it's really impossible to try to find a trash can unless you're about 3 or 4 feet away from it. So you can tell your dog, find the trash can, and it will look around, and if there's one near you, it'll go right up to the trash can and find it. Same with a trash can in a store, or a trash can in a coffee shop, or a trash can at school. That dog will be able to target the object you're looking for and go up to it and find it for you. Targeting can be used with a lot of different things, like empty seats. If you go to a coffee shop and you can't see where there's an empty seat, you can tell your dog to find an empty seat. Same with on a bus. If you wanted to find a person For instance, if you're in a pretty big room, like an auditorium, and you want to find, say, your mom or dad or brother or sister or your friend, you can train your dog to find a certain person, and usually the schools that train the guide dogs, I'll get into that in a second, they do train targeting. They train you how to train the dog, how to target things. So you can tell the dog, find this person. So for me, I could tell my dog to find my mom, and the dog would look around in the room and it would bring you right to the person you're looking for. So imagine if you can't find a person in a grocery store or a mall and you want to find that person again. Well, instead of just blindly walking around looking like you have no idea what you're doing, your dog can bring you right up to that person immediately. How cool is that, right? So of course, other than that, a dog, what I think is really appealing about a dog also is they go very, very fast. With me, the faster I go, the less vision I have because I see by blinking. Even with dark glasses, yes, I still blink. It's more clear, but I still blink, so I don't see movement. That means that the less movement I see, the more chance I have of running into things because I'm moving fast and I'm only seeing about every 3 or 4 seconds a snapshot of a few feet around me. So I could move fast with a dog and not have to worry about running into things or tripping over things or having issues with, cars and traffic because the dog moves fast just like I want to go, but it also keeps me safe. So I find if I'm going by myself, I have to move slow usually, especially if I'm in an area I'm not familiar with. But with a dog, you can go as fast as you want. And usually those dogs do go very, very fast. So you don't have to have your vision restricting you. That's a really cool thing about guide dogs. Finally, I'm going to say a positive about guide dogs is that for me, with Achromotopsia, I found it pretty lonely having low vision in general. And I say that in the fact that people often don't know how to approach you when you have low vision, especially when you have something like we have where you're wearing dark glasses inside. You're just not very approachable, I've found. That's just the way things are. And especially in school and stuff like that. And to add to that is the fact that you are not very good at approaching other people because it's very hard to tell who's who and it's very hard to approach someone and be sure of who they are. What a dog does is, other than all the safety and all the independence and all the cool different ways you can travel with a dog, the final thing they bring is a new social aspect. And this is actually a positive for some people and a negative for others. I think for me it would be a positive. So what I mean by social aspect is that when you have a guide dog with you, dogs and animals in general often really open people up. They make people interested and they will come over and they'll talk to you because you have your dog with you. And of course, originally it'll probably be like, oh, that's a beautiful dog, what does he do? And so you can tell them, and it's kind of an icebreaker. It's a way to introduce your disability in a way that it's not awkward, it's not for other people, it's not weird, it's very natural, it's very fun. So in that way, a dog introduces your disability into the community in a way that's just a lot more open in general. So because of that, your disability isn't going to make you as isolated as it did before. It'll be a lot easier to interact with people, to meet people, to know who people are. And a fun fact, actually, I've heard from other guide dog users, is that when their dog notices that someone's approaching them that they've met before, the dog will kind of perk up, and the handler can feel it through the harness of the dog. And so they'll always know when someone is coming that they know. And so this is a really big help to people that they don't know, who's who or where they're coming. The dog will actually give them kind of a heads up that, oh, the person we're meeting is coming, and you can know that. So like if you're meeting someone at a coffee shop and the person that you're meeting is coming towards you, you'll be able to know before the person even says anything because of your dog and the body language it's giving you. So yeah, there's just a lot of really neat things that a dog can give that would actually be very useful to someone with lower vision that is an acromat. So I'm going to explain some things about guide dogs that people don't actually generally know. Guide dogs are kind of they're like a little misinterpreted, because you might see a guide dog every once in a while, but you don't really know how they're trained or raised or anything like that. So I'm going to get into it really quick right now. First off, guide dogs are raised at certain schools primarily. So in the US, I think there's about 12 different schools that raise guide dogs. They usually do this by breeding their own dogs, and then after the dogs are a certain age, they pick the ones that they've bred that they know would make really good dogs, or that look like they'd be good candidates, and they give them to people called puppy raisers. And the puppy raisers will take those dogs, and they are called service dogs in training, and they're allowed to bring the dog with them everywhere. And their job is to housebreak the dog, to train the dog, to socialize the dog, to get the dog very comfortable with going everywhere with them, so that when it is a working guide dog, it is able to face all sorts of different situations without being scared or nervous or anything like that. Once the dog is usually it's about 1.5 to 2 years old, they'll return the dog to the school that they got them from. And so many people say, how do you do this? How do you return that dog when you've put all this time into it? So many raisers say that it's easier for a few reasons. One is because they say the feeling they get from seeing their dog that they've raised become a working guide dog and help someone else is so much better than anything they could ever feel by keeping the dogs to themselves, which is amazing. These people are really amazing, and I don't know how they do what they do, but they're just awesome. Another thing is that a lot of people, they can't keep a dog at home all day. They're working people, but they still want a dog. So this is where guide dog in training comes in handy, because you can bring that dog to work with you, you can bring it around when you're shopping, different members of the family take it to school or to work or anywhere they're going. And because of this, you don't have to worry about having a dog at home that's not going to get enough socialization from the family. This dog goes everywhere with you while it's in training. And because of that, it's not an issue that you're a busy person. The busier you are, the better it is for the dog. But anyway, once the dog is raised by the family and then given back to the school, generally these schools then take the puppies, or now they're usually fully grown adult dogs, and they start training them in what's called formal training. So first of all, they test the dogs to make sure that they are sound. The dogs can't be scared of anything. The dogs have to be, generally confident. They have to be fit. They have to have stellar health. So the schools always do very, very in-depth health checks. They have to make sure that there is no behavioral issues with the dogs. And if they're all sound, everything checks out, and they start to train them in formal training. And this is where the dog really learns how to be a guide dog. It is where the trainers and the school teach it how to pull on its harness. They teach it how to avoid obstacles, stop at curbs, navigate through busy streets and areas, to sit quietly when you're eating or something like that, intelligent disobedience. So all of this stuff the trainers make sure to work with the dog on. And for dogs who pass all of these, they become working guides. Now, it's important to note that not all the dogs that they bring into formal training will pass formal training for a variety of reasons. Guide dogs have to like their job. They have to like working. And a lot of people think guide dogs are kind of like slaves, but that's not the case at all. These dogs love to work. If the dog doesn't want to work, then they won't make it. They will, give it either another job like a therapy animal, or a sniffer dog, or something the dog enjoys more, or if it doesn't want to do that, they'll just give the dog to a nice family. All guide dog schools have waiting lists either for career change dogs or for retired guide dogs. Once the dog is almost done formal training, the trainer will usually match the dog with someone in their application waiting list. So usually when you want a guide dog, you go to a school and you fill out a very large application. This involves doctor's notes, optometrist reports, interviews, and health checks, making sure that you have the right O&M skills, character references, all sorts of stuff that you have to fill out. It's a huge application because these schools don't want anyone to have their dog. They want to make sure that the right person has the dog, that the person will use the dog, because if the dog isn't used, its training is going to go to waste. It's going to forget what it's been trained to do. So the person has to use the dog very often and stuff like that. But yeah, once you fill out this whole application, you're on a waiting list, and the trainers will look at each person on the waiting list, their specific strengths, what they want in a dog, what they need in a dog, and then they'll look at all the dogs they have trained. And at the very end of the dog's training, they will look at the handler they're thinking about matching it with, and they will sometimes train the dog a little extra to be very, very strong in the areas that the person who is going to be matched with the dog needs. A lot of people have asked me, like, do you get to name the dog when you get it, or do you get to choose your dog? Generally, no. The school matches you with whichever dog works best for you. And this is because they want a successful working guide dog team. So no, you don't get to choose your dog or the dog's name. The school matches you with whichever dog works best for you. There's a few exceptions to this. Usually people are allowed to say that they have preferences in the dogs they like. And actually, in my case, because I have allergies, you can say that you need a specific breed of dog. So for me, I actually need a poodle guide dog. And yes, standard poodles are raised as guide dogs, which a lot of people don't know. The main breeds raised are usually standard poodles, golden retrievers, Labrador retrievers, and German shepherds. You also might see a few collies, a few Vizslas. I've even heard of a school that does Dobermans, but mainly the 4 breeds I mentioned first are the main breeds of guide dogs. Anyway, once the school has a match for their candidate, they usually will call them a month or 2 in advance, tell them that they have a match, and then the fun part of the student and the dog training together will begin. So how that works is actually the student, almost in all occasions, goes down to the school to stay in like a residential program at the school. Almost all guide dog schools have facilities that they keep the students in and while they're training with their dog. And these are long programs actually. Usually they're 2 weeks to a month, and most of them are a month. A lot of the time it's state law that you have to train with the dog for a month to make sure you are a safe working team. There's a lot that goes into working with a guide dog. It's not just giving the person a dog with a harness and saying go nuts. It's a lot of footwork, it's a lot of understanding how to manage the dog in certain situations. There's a lot of lectures on health, on safety, on public access laws, everything like that you're going to go through with the school. You're going to learn how to travel with the dog in almost every scenario, on escalators and elevators, in malls, in restaurants, in airports, just everywhere. Usually there's a few students who come to class at a time. They all work together with their newly matched dogs to train. And after the month, they are done training with the school, and they usually have like a final test. I think a lot of the times they're like dropped off at a random place and told to go somewhere with their dog. Yeah, so after this huge training process, they graduate with their dog, and usually the puppy raisers, the people who initially raised the dogs, come in for the graduation too to see who their dog has been matched with. And after this, the dog and the person are in fact a working guide dog team. And a fun fact about that is most schools give you this guide dog, the leash, the harness, the supplies for the dog, the training and staying at the school, and all the meals you get. All of that's free. It's completely free. Guide dog schools are usually funded by donations and by amazing volunteers, and it's just amazing all the things they do. Guide dog schools are charities, and they are tax deductible and all that stuff. So a lot of big companies will donate to guide dog schools, and it's a great cause to donate to. But once the team has finished and graduated, then they're kind of on their own. But the schools will provide follow-up training if they need it. They'll send trainers out to the guide dog team if any behavioral problems come up with the dog or just any main issues. So yeah, and now I'm just going to get into a few more misconceptions about guide dogs in general. A lot of people say guide dogs can't play, they can't have fun, and not the case at all. In terms of a guide dog, when their harness is on, they're a working animal. When their harness is off, they are a dog, like a well-behaved dog, but a dog. They're allowed to play, they're allowed to have fun, they're allowed to be silly, and they're allowed to just be a dog. When their harness goes on, that demeanor changes. They know they're working, they know they have to behave. So you might have heard not to pet a working guide dog or service dog, and I'm gonna tell you why right now. I don't think it's fair to tell people not to pet them, not tell them why. So there's a very good reason not to pet a working service animal. A guide dog specifically, its job is to keep its handler safe. Its job is to keep a lookout, technically, because the owner can't, and to make sure that they're traveling safely from point A to point B. When a guide dog is distracted, so if it's in harness and someone pets it or tries to feed it food or tries to call to it, and the guide dog gets distracted by this, it's not looking out for its owner. And this can be extremely dangerous. For instance, what if there is a light pole right in front of the owner? The guide dog is trained to bring itself and its owner around anything, not just going around but not looking for its owner. It's trained to actually bring the full width of the team around any obstacle. If the guide dog's walking and someone tries to feed it food or someone tries to scratch its head while it's in harness, the guide dog of course will be distracted because it's an animal, it's not a machine. And when it's distracted, it's not always going to be paying attention to its partner, and that can actually cause the partner to be hurt. The partner is trained to trust the dog completely, and when the dog is distracted, that's going to cause some issues. So it's really, really important that the dog can focus on its handler while it's in harness. If you really, really want to pet the dog, make sure please to ask the handler first, because you have to understand that even if it doesn't look like the dog's working, for instance, someone's in a restaurant and the dog is laying under the table quietly, that dog is laying under the table quietly because it has been extremely well trained not to be a nuisance in public. If you want to feed the dog food when it's lying under the table quietly, and the dog eats the food and gets used to the fact that while it's in restaurants it's allowed to eat the food, well, the dog isn't going to be lying under that table quietly for the rest of its working life. It's going to be trying to beg and get people to give it food, and it's not going to be a good dog to have in restaurants. These dogs are trained for public access. They're trained to be quiet, they're trained to be respectful, they're trained not to cause any issues for people or other customers. You are inadvertently undoing that training when you are getting the dog to break its downstay, to break its quiet behavior, and to get excited over being patted or being fed. Sometimes, if you ask the guide dog owner if you can pet the dog, sometimes they'll say yes, but usually they will say no. And of course, I've just explained that reasoning. If you're getting to know the guide dog owner well and you see them and the guide dog is being taken off harness and just put onto leash for any reason, then it's usually safe to pet the guide dog, but again, ask the owner. A lot of the times, if the owner isn't busy and you ask them to pet the dog, they will take off the dog's harness so that you're not undoing the training, because the dog has to know when it's in harness, it can't be distracted, but when it's out of harness, it's just a dog. It can be patted and played with like any other dog. So that is generally why you cannot pet a working dog. It's very important, and as tempting as it is, please appreciate the dog from afar. It's really going to help the handler. If you try to pet it without the handler knowing, that can undo a lot of the dog's training, and the blind person won't even know what's happening because of course we can't really see. So just really, really keep that in mind. It's really important for any working animal. The last thing I really wanted to touch on is access laws in service dogs and guide dogs. So the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, was made to protect the rights of disabled people. And a disabled person has the right to bring their service animal in with them. It is the rights of the disabled person. The service animal actually has no rights, but the person has the right to bring a well-trained service animal that can do a task for them in with them to any public place. So that of course means that even if you have a working animal with you, if you are not the one who's disabled, the working animal has no rights. The only time the working animal is allowed into any public place is if it's with its disabled handler, or if it's a service dog in training and of course is being trained by someone who's training the service dog. In certain states, there are laws for service dogs in training to have public access, but federally, the federal law says that only those who are disabled and have a working service animal with them have the right to bring the animal in. There's been a lot of issues here in the US with fake service dogs that can cause a really, really big issue. Technically, in America, in the US, you are allowed to bring a dog in with you if it provides you with a task. So technically, there's no proof needed to be sure that it's a service dog. Someone who owns a business is allowed to ask if the dog with the person is a service dog and what tasks it's trained to do to mitigate a disability. Because of that, a lot of people just say, oh, it's a service dog, it's a seizure alert dog, and they will bring their extremely untrained animal with them into stores, and the dog will bark and go crazy. But I'm gonna tell you right now that any dog inside any public place, even if it's a service dog, that is causing a disruption to the business, so if it's barking, if it's growling, if it's lunging, if it's hurting the business in any way, if it's relieving inside the business, if it's hurting anything in the business, if it's destroying merchandise, any of those instances, you have the right to ask the person with the dog to leave the dog outside and to come in without the dog, because businesses have rights too. A well-trained service dog will not do any of what I just mentioned. It will be extremely well-trained. It'll be almost unnoticeable. If it is not a service dog, then you're probably going to see those behaviors. So technically, you'll know if it's a fake service dog if it's doing any of the behaviors I listed above, and it is illegal to actually say your dog is a service dog when it's not. But anyway, if someone brings in a fake service dog and they claim it's a service dog, and the service dog is not disrupting the business, is not being in any way disruptive, is not being destructive, then I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do, but to be fair, the dog is not going to harm your business. If someone brings in a fake service dog and the dog is barking, if the dog is pulling at its leash like crazy, if it's trying to lunge at other customers, anything like that, you, as a business owner, have the right to ask the dog to leave. It is completely legal. It is under the ADA. You will not be in trouble. You will not be in any legal trouble at all for any of that. So just a heads up to businesses, if you do own a business, that is legal. It is not legal to ask a dog to leave in terms of allergies. So if you're allergic to dogs, you still have to let the dog in. But again, the dog has to be well behaved. And you of course can ask that the dog maybe be on the other side of the room from you or something like that, and make an accommodation so that it works for both of you. But yeah, generally that is how the laws work with service animals. The only place that service animals aren't allowed by law is places that don't allow in the general public. I'll have to check this to make sure, but I believe churches are private organizations, so they don't have to let service animals in. But as my dad is a pastor, I know that most churches will be absolutely fine with it. Certain places and hospitals do not have to let service animals in because of health issues to their patients. So like the intensive care units and operating rooms and things like that, of course, they need to be kept sterile, and you can't really keep a service animal completely sterile. You can't put a service animal in scrubs or something. So those places do not have to allow service animals in, and like someone's house, because of course that's a private place. If someone doesn't want your service animal at their house, then they do definitely not have to let you, or your service animal in. It's their house. But yeah, any public place, like a library, a mall, a store, a restaurant, any place like that does have to let the animal in. So that's basically the access laws with service animals. It is illegal to not allow an animal in if it is well trained and it is a service animal. And you can be fined or sent to jail for not letting the animal in. But again, if the animal is being disruptive or destroying things or just being a generally bad dog or whatever, then yeah, you do not have to let the animal in. So yeah, there's some really good fun facts for you guys. So I think that's about it for me ranting about service animals. I have applied for a guide dog, and I know I've just explained why. And I will keep you guys updated on how that goes in the whole application process. I've just finished my application, I've got everything in, and I'm hoping to get my dog before university, which will start in the fall. it'll just be loads and loads of help to me. I live in a very sunny place, so for an achromat, that's just bad news. So we'll see how it works and how everything goes. But I hope this video was interesting to you guys. I can't wait to show you my dog when I hopefully get it. And thank you for listening. Thank you for learning something today, hopefully. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Okay, thanks. Bye.